Waking up, David Harrison woke up to an intimate photo of his wife and her assistant on his phone sent by the assistant himself. He calmly tapped the Send to All button. Then, staring across the company's IPO launch party at his wife and her assistant, he thought, the game is just getting started. 1. The roar of the party hit him like a wave, thick with the cloying sweetness of champagne bubbles. Rainbow lights fractured against a towering pyramid of champagne flutes, casting a dizzying glare across the ballroom. David stood in a corner, immaculate in a tailored suit, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the cold metal of his smartphone. On the screen was a photo of his wife, Catherine Foster, and her assistant, Marcus Blake. The background was unmistakably a hotel suite. Catherine, draped in a silk robe, was holding a spoonful of cake to Marcus's lips with a playful smile. Marcus, for his part, was leaning in to accept it, his face a mask of smug satisfaction. The angle was intimate, the implications obvious. The sender was Marcus himself. The caption was a single line of text, "Dave, Catherine said this cake was especially sweet and wanted me to try some. Just thought I'd share." Grinning emoji. A familiar tearing pain seized David's heart, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. He knew this feeling intimately. He had lived through this exact betrayal once before, and in the accident that followed, so carefully staged, he had lost everything. But this time, he didn't smash the phone. He didn't charge across the room to confront the happy couple because he had already died once. The memory stabbed into his mind like shards of broken glass, the sickening weightlessness of falling from a skyscraper, the shriek of the wind in his ears, and the two figures, Catherine and Marcus, standing on the edge of the rooftop, their gazes cold and indifferent as they watched him plummet. He had been reborn, thrown back to this very night, the company's IPO party. The exact moment his life had shattered. "David, what are you doing hiding over here? Catherine has been looking for you." A department manager sidled up, holding a drink and flashing an obsequious smile. Now that TechCore had gone public, everyone knew that David Harrison, the CTO, was the true genius behind the company, even if his wife, Catherine Foster, was the CEO and the public face. David instantly wiped the storm from his eyes. He locked the phone and slid it into his pocket, his expression a practiced mask of placid exhaustion. When he looked up, he was wearing his usual mild-mannered smile. "Just getting some air," he said. "It's a little loud in there." "You can say that again. But hey, it's a huge night. Come on, I think Catherine is about to cut the cake." The manager nudged him forward, and David let himself be swept back toward the center of the ballroom. The crowd parted for him. He saw Catherine standing under the brilliant chandeliers, a vision in a crimson dress, laughing with a group of investors. Her assistant, Marcus, that clean-cut, boyishly handsome young man, was glued to her side, refilling her glass and whispering details in her ear with a practiced intimacy that was blindingly obvious. David caught snippets of conversation from the surrounding crowd. "Catherine and her assistant make a great team. They really do. A real power couple. I mean, professionally, of course. The CTO, David, is always so low-key, but he's the one who led the team that built the core tech for this IPO. I heard Marcus is her right-hand man now. She brings him into all the top-level project meetings." David listened, a chill seeping into his bones. In his past life, he had just thought Marcus was overly eager and that Catherine trusted him a little too much. He never looked deeper. Now he saw their glaring synergy for what it was. It had been there all along. Catherine spotted him and waved him over, her smile flawless. "David, get over here. Mr. Patterson was just praising our data security architecture." Her smile was perfect, as if that poisonous text message had never existed. David walked toward her, his gaze sweeping over Marcus. The younger man wore a perfectly calibrated smile of deference, but for a split second, his eyes flashed with a look of unmistakable triumph and provocation. "You're too kind, Mr. Patterson." "It was a team effort," David said, his voice perfectly level. "Don't be so modest," Patterson boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. "You two are a dynamic duo, and with a rising star like Marcus here, TechCore has a limitless future. A toast to all of you." Everyone raised their glasses. Marcus smiled and raised his glass too, positioning himself naturally at Catherine's other side, as if he were the third partner in their success. David picked up a champagne flute, his fingertips cold against the glass. He watched Catherine clink glasses with the investor, watched her habitually brush a stray lock of hair behind her ear, watched her completely at ease with Marcus standing so close. An icy hand squeezed his heart. It was time to cut the cake. A massive three-tiered cake was wheeled out, topped with a glittering sign that read, TechCore IPO Success. Catherine picked up the ceremonial knife, then looked from David to Marcus, her smile radiant. David, Marcus, come on up. The company wouldn't be here today without the hard work of you two. Marcus immediately stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Catherine. I couldn't, Catherine, he said, his tone overly humble. This was all you and David. I just helped where I could. He said the words, but he didn't move an inch. Catherine gave him a playful, scolding look. Don't be a stranger. You. David watched them, motionless. He slowly pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and opened the photo. Then he turned the glaring screen to face the perfectly harmonious pair. His voice was quiet, but it landed like an ice cube in a deep fryer, instantly silencing the buzz of the party. You're right. We certainly couldn't have done it without Marcus's contributions. David's voice was so calm it was chilling. So much so that he felt the need to document those contributions and send me a photo to admire. The smile on Catherine's face froze solid the moment she saw the phone screen. The color drained from her cheeks. Marcus's carefully constructed facade of smugness and deference shattered, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. How did you? He caught himself, but it was too late. The executives and investors standing nearby had seen it all, the incriminating image on the screen and Marcus's self-incriminating panic. A virus of whispers spread through the room. What's going on? That picture, is that Catherine and her assistant? That looks a little too close for comfort. And the assistant sent it to her husband. What is that? A declaration of war. Catherine was the first to recover. She fought to control her panic, trying to salvage the situation. David, what are you doing? You can't prove anything with one misleading photo. This is the company's biggest night. Our biggest night, David repeated, his gaze slicing past Catherine to fix on a pale-faced Marcus. Which is why he chose this specific night to send me this particular photo. Tell me, Catherine, what message do you think he was trying to send? He no longer called her by her full name. Just Catherine. Marcus's voice was shrill as he tried to defend himself. Dave, it's a misunderstanding. I photoshopped it as a joke. I was just messing with you. He was rambling, sweat beading on his forehead. A photoshopped joke, David took a step closer. A joke using a photo of you and my wife in a hotel room while she's wearing a robe. You have a sick sense of humor, Marcus. The words, hotel room, landed like a sledgehammer, and the room fell completely silent. Catherine shot a furious, panicked glare at Marcus. She couldn't believe he'd be stupid enough to hand David the knife himself. But David gave them no time to regroup. His thumb moved swiftly across the screen. Since Marcus seems to think this is such a hilarious joke, I figure we shouldn't keep it to ourselves. He looked up, his eyes scanning the crowd, his voice now laced with ice. I just forwarded it to the entire company's email list and the primary investor group chat. Please, everyone, enjoy the laugh. Before he even finished speaking, a series of phone chimes and notification buzzes ripped through the silence like a string of firecrackers. People glanced at their phones. Gasps followed. A web of shocked, speculative, and scandalized gazes was woven between David, Catherine, and Marcus. A dead silence consumed the ballroom. The last trace of color vanished from Catherine's face. She stared at David as if he were a complete stranger. She snatched a phone from a nearby investor's hand, and after seeing the email, she stumbled back a step. Marcus stood frozen, as if struck by lightning, his lips trembling, unable to form a sound. David placed his untouched champagne flute on a passing waiter's tray. He smoothed the front of his suit jacket. His tone was calm, but carried a finality that was absolute. Please continue the celebration. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. He turned, and under the weight of 100 silent, complicated stares, he walked calmly and deliberately toward the ballroom exit. Catherine finally found her voice, screeching, David, stop right there. Where do you think you're going? He didn't stop. He didn't look back. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the still air and reached every ear in the room. "You screwed me over, Catherine," he said. "The game is just beginning." 3. The heavy doors of the ballroom swung shut behind him, sealing off the chaos, the shock, and the impending storm. David stepped into an elevator and pressed the button for the parking garage. The mirrored walls reflected his cold, impassive face. His eyes were devoid of any warmth. His phone began to vibrate incessantly. He didn't need to look to know it was Catherine. He powered it off. This was only the beginning. The photo was just the spark that had ignited the fuse, tearing away the facade of their life together. The betrayal of his past life, the scheming, the final fatal push, he would repay it all, piece by piece. The elevator doors opened and a blast of cool, damp air hit him. He walked to his car with a steady, measured gait. The night was as black as ink. Over the next few days, a palpable sense of panic and rampant gossip gripped TechCore. David showed up at the office the next morning right on time. He walked into the CTO's office, handled his work, and called meetings with the engineering department as if nothing had happened. The only difference was that he no longer made any effort to interact with Catherine. He responded to her calls and emails with terse, professional tone, dealing only with official business. He was cold, distant. Catherine and Marcus, meanwhile, were completely on the defensive. "David, what the hell do you want?" Catherine finally cornered him outside his office, unable to contain herself any longer. Her eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Her voice was a mixture of barely suppressed rage and a thin, undeniable threat of fear. David gave her a bland look, then stepped aside to let her into his office before closing the door behind them. "I'm working. Is there something you need, Miss Foster?" He walked to his desk, sat down, and casually opened a technical document. His indifference made Catherine tremble with fury. "Do you have any idea what you did? I've had half a dozen investors calling me. The stock is volatile right out of the gate. Marcus had to take a leave of absence to hide from the fallout. Are you happy now? He's on leave." David's pen paused. He looked up, a flicker of cold amusement in his eyes. "That's a shame. I would have thought he'd have the courage to face the consequences of his joke." "It was a misunderstanding." Catherine's voice rose. "Marcus is young and reckless. He acted without thinking. He was just trying to provoke me." David cut her off coldly. "Or was he trying to prove his loyalty to you, to show off how much you favor him? Do you have to think the worst of me?" "David, we've been married for years. Don't talk about our marriage." David's voice turned frigid. "The moment you let him send that picture, we weren't married anymore." "Fine. Okay, I was wrong. I admit Marcus and we got too close. But nothing happened. We were just tired before the party, resting in the hotel, and we shared some cake. He took the picture on a whim and sent it. It was stupid. I've already torn him a new one for it. Tired. Resting." David's lips curved into a smile so cold it made Catherine's blood run cold. The CEO and her assistant were resting together in a hotel room right before the company's IPO launch party. "Catherine, do you really think the board and our investors are going to buy that story?" Catherine's throat tightened. She was speechless. David leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers on the desk. His gaze was like a scalpel dissecting her. "The reason I am sitting here today is as the CTO and co-founder of this company, to maintain stability and morale within the engineering team. As for everything else..." He paused. "My lawyer will be in touch." "Your lawyer?" Catherine's pupils contracted. "What are you talking about?" "A few things," David said, his tone flat. "First, the formal separation of our marital assets. Second, how the company should handle an assistant who uses his position to maliciously harass and provoke a senior executive. And third, it appears there are some irregularities in the accounting for a few projects he managed." The word accounting made Catherine's face change dramatically. Her voice shot up. "You're investigating him." "David, you have no right to investigate another executive's assistant." "I'm not investigating him specifically," David corrected her, his voice clear and calm. "As a victim of his behavior, I am submitting a formal inquiry to our internal audit and risk management departments. After all, if an assistant is reckless enough to openly provoke a co-founder, who's to say his professional conduct is flawless? For the good of the company, it's necessary to verify. In a few short sentences, he had transformed a personal scandal into an issue of corporate governance and fiduciary duty. Catherine finally understood, David was playing for keeps. He wasn't just looking for a fight. He was using this as leverage to systematically destroy Marcus and, by extension, her. She stared at the man before her, so calm he was terrifying, and a chilling sense of unfamiliarity washed over her. The old David, while a technical genius, had always deferred to her. He had never been this sharp, this aggressive, this utterly relentless. "You've changed," she whispered, stunned. David lowered his gaze, hiding the dark currents swirling in his eyes. 4. Dying once will do that to a person. He pressed the intercom button on his desk phone. "Jennifer, notify the engineering leads. Meeting in conference room 1 in 5 minutes." He then turned back to Catherine, his tone all business. "Ms. Foster, if there's nothing else, I have a meeting to run. The team's next project can't be delayed by anyone's personal drama." Catherine watched as he stood, picked up a folder, and walked out the door without a second glance. She collapsed back into the leather chair opposite his desk, her body limp, her face ashen. A few days later, David's lawyer served Catherine with a draft of their divorce settlement. The terms were clear, the division of assets clinical. It also included a formal demand for a full internal investigation into Marcus Blake's conduct. Catherine tried to stall, to formulate a counterattack, but David moved faster. Not only did he submit a detailed file of his concerns to the audit committee, but he somehow convinced a key member of the board of directors to table a new agenda item for an emergency meeting: executive conduct and potential governance risks. At the meeting, David never once mentioned his personal life. His entire presentation focused on corporate image, investor confidence, and ethical risk at the management level. His logic was airtight, his evidence damning. He had even uncovered preliminary proof of Marcus using his corporate card for personal expenses and having suspiciously close ties to certain vendors. Catherine sat at the head of the table, listening to David's calm, methodical takedown. She watched the faces of the board members grow darker and more severe with every slide. The expensive leather of her chair suddenly felt like it was lined with needles. She tried to defend Marcus several times, but each attempt was ruthlessly dismantled by David with colder facts and more solid evidence. His voice never rose, but every word was a shard of ice, backing her into a corner from which there was no escape. The meeting ended. The board's resolution was passed. Marcus Blake was to be suspended from all duties, effective immediately, pending a comprehensive internal audit. Furthermore, the board tactfully advised Catherine to handle her personal affairs with discretion to avoid any further negative impact on the company. The moment the vote passed, Catherine stared at David in disbelief. He met her gaze, his expression unreadable, but his eyes held a piercing coldness that seemed to see right through her. It was a silent declaration: "This is just the beginning." A chill shot up Catherine's spine and spread through her entire body. 5. David returned to his office and locked the door. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the river of traffic flowing below. This was the place. In his previous life, this was where Catherine and Marcus had pushed him out, wasn't it? Right after he had confronted them with proof that they had embezzled millions from the company and cooked the books. They thought his death would erase everything, that they could enjoy their stolen wealth and power with a clean conscience. But fate had other plans. The sharp ring of his desk phone cut through his thoughts. It was his assistant. "Mr. Harrison, Marcus Blake, he's in the lobby. He's demanding to see you. He's very agitated. Security is with him, but he's refusing to leave. Let him up." It was time to see his old friend. The office door burst open and Marcus stumbled in. In just a few days, he had become a wreck. His hair was a mess, his eyes were sunken and bloodshot, and his former swagger had been replaced by the frantic energy of a cornered animal. "David, what the hell do you want from me?" he screamed, completely losing control. "Haven't you done enough? I lost my job. Everyone is laughing at me. Are you satisfied now?" David turned slowly from the window and studied him with a calm, detached air. "I did this to you. You took the photo. You sent it. You faked the expense reports. All I did was bring the truth to light. You forced my hand. Ryan's eyes were wild. If you hadn't been holding on to Catherine, if you weren't always standing in my way, she should have been with me. With you. David looked at him as if he were an absurd joke. What is she, a prize to be won? He took a step forward. Did you two really think that no matter what you did, I would just swallow my pride and keep quiet for the sake of the company, like I always did? Don't you dare act so high and mighty. You're just a tech nerd. Without Catherine, you're nothing. This company is what it is because of her networking and business sense. Is that so? David's voice was pure ice. Then did you know that the patents for all of our core technology are registered under my name? Personally. If I walk, TechCore becomes an empty shell overnight. Marcus's eyes widened in shock. He clearly had no idea. And did you know why our investors have been so solid? David continued, pressing his advantage. Because they're betting on me, on my engineering team, and our roadmap, not on Catherine's inflated marketing numbers, and certainly not on your ass kissing. You're lying. You'll find out soon enough if I'm lying. David tossed a small flash drive onto his desk. You might be interested in what's on this. What is it? It's a complete record of you embezzling company funds and getting kickbacks from vendors. Far more complete than the version I gave the audit committee. David's voice was flat, but the words hit Marcus like a thunderclap. Marcus's face went white as a sheet. No, that's impossible. How could you? How could I get it? David cut him off. The only way to keep a secret is to not do it in the first place. Did you really think deleting a few server logs and fudging some numbers would be enough? He picked up the flash drive and held it in front of Marcus's face. Tell me, if I give this to the SEC, how many years do you think you'll get? Marcus's legs gave out and he nearly collapsed. A cold sweat soaked through his shirt. He stared at David in horror, as if looking into the face of a demon. You can't. Catherine won't let you do this. David let out a short, cold laugh. She can barely save herself. The board has already launched an investigation into her. You think she's in any position to protect you? Marcus finally broke. He lunged across the desk, trying to snatch the drive. Give it to me. Give it to me. David sidestepped him easily and pressed a silent alarm button under his desk. 2 security guards burst in, grabbing the hysterical Marcus in an iron grip. Get him out of here, David ordered, his face a mask of indifference. And from now on, he's not to set foot in this building ever again. David, you'll rot in hell for this. You bastard. Catherine will make you pay. You just wait. Marcus's hysterical curses echoed down the hall as he was dragged away. 6. The office was quiet again. His phone buzzed. A call from Catherine. David declined it several times, but she kept calling back, relentless. He finally answered. Catherine's voice, tight with fury and panic, shot through the phone. David, what did you do to Marcus? He just called me. He was. A minor issue, David interrupted, his voice smooth and uninflected. I just had a chat with him about the evidence I have. You know, the kind that could make him rot in prison for a very long time. The breathing on the other end of the line stopped cold. Also, this is your official notice. Per the terms of our divorce settlement, I am demanding a division of your shares in the company. If you have any objections, we can discuss them in court. You'll never get away with this. Catherine shrieked. David, don't push me too far. Push you too far. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He ended the call. He tossed the phone back onto his desk, his gaze returning to the window. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. He knew that on the other end of that deadline, Catherine was experiencing a terror 100 times worse than falling from a building. Her empire was crumbling from the inside out. And his revenge had only just begun. He picked up his desk phone and dialed the extension for his lead engineer. Alan, get the team together. Conference Room 1. It's time we talked about the next phase of Project Phoenix. Project Phoenix, the secret R&D initiative he had been quietly building since his return. The true future of technology. His future. A new era built with people he could actually trust. The sun outside was bright. The light on his desk phone blinked again. A direct line from the head of internal audit. Mr. Harrison, the preliminary report on the projects Marcus Blake managed is complete. It's much worse than we thought. The amount of kickbacks is substantial, and we have a clear money trail showing that several large payments were funneled into an offshore shell corporation registered under Ms. Foster's name. Understood. Submit the report to the board's Special Investigative Committee and copy all independent directors. Make sure the evidence is ironclad and can withstand any legal challenge. We will, Mr. Harrison. Also, the SEC just contacted us. They said they received a highly detailed anonymous tip and are requesting our full cooperation in an investigation into Marcus Blake for embezzlement and commercial bribery. Give them our full cooperation, David said, a cold smile touching his lips. It's every employee's duty. Tell the agents that our audit department will provide them with anything and everything they need. He hung up and glanced at his computer screen. A financial news alert popped up, the headline stark and brutal. TechCore in turmoil amid executive scandal, stock plummets 15% at opening bell as founding couple turns on each other. There was a photo of Catherine surrounded by reporters at the entrance to the building. Her face was pale, her panic obvious even behind dark sunglasses. There was another photo of Marcus being led away by federal agents, shouting, "Catherine, help me." The online comments were a firestorm of speculation, mockery, and dire predictions for the company's future. The market panic was exactly what he had expected. In fact, it was a calculated part of his plan. Panic would accelerate the collapse of Catherine's support. Panic would force the wavering shareholders to see reality. 7. David stood and walked toward conference room 1. Alan, his most trusted lead, saw him and gave a grim, determined nod. "You've all seen the news," David said as he took his seat at the head of the table. "No pleasantries." His eyes cut across the room. "It's chaos out there. The vultures are circling. But for us, this is the perfect cover for Project Phoenix." An assistant moved silently around the room, handing out encrypted tablets. "The work we've been pouring into Phoenix for the past few months is about to pay off. This is the final architectural design and core algorithm optimization. It's classified at the highest level. For the next 3 months, we have one objective: while the entire world is distracted by corporate gossip, we will complete a closed development and internal test cycle of the Phoenix engine." His voice was quiet, but it shattered the gloom in the room. The world thinks TechCore is finished. Let them. By the time they realize what's happened, the fire from Project Phoenix will have scorched the entire industry. Alan, you're on core module development. Sarah, your team needs to crack the distributed deployment bottleneck. Thomas, the security architecture is life or death. I want it to be a fortress. Any unauthorized access gets crushed at the firewall. Understood. The room was filled with the focused, determined energy of true builders. "Remember," David said, his eyes sweeping over them one last time, "we are not putting out a fire. We are lighting a new dawn." Dismissed. They filed out quickly, and the room was quiet once more. David remained seated, his fingers tapping a silent rhythm on the table. His phone lit up with a text from an encrypted unknown number: "The fish are in the net. Awaiting your signal to pull." Deep in David's eyes, the ice of his vengeance finally cracked, revealing a light that was hot, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. "Catherine," he thought. "Your terror is just beginning. Losing Marcus, losing the board, losing the wealth her stock represented, and soon losing the legal protection of her marriage, that was all just the appetizer. The main course would be watching the tech nerd she'd so casually discarded single-handedly turn all her ambition and betrayal to dust." A strange calm fell over TechCore, the quiet at the center of the storm. The board's Special Investigative Committee operated like a well-oiled machine, dragging every suspicious transaction and every backdoor deal Catherine and Marcus had ever made into the light. The SEC's involvement escalated the matter exponentially. Marcus had been denied bail and was facing a litany of federal charges, while Catherine's name wasn't yet in the official indictments. But everyone knew she was drowning in the same swamp. The stock price continued to slide as panicked investors dumped their shares. The once celebrated TechCore looked like it was in a death spiral. Catherine was frantic, calling in every favor she had to stop the bleeding. But the flash drive David had shown Marcus had been a Pandora's box. The evidence it contained was a perfect, unbreakable chain linking directly to her offshore accounts. Every move she made to save herself was countered by more damning proof. The allies and sycophants who had once surrounded her vanished like mist, terrified of being caught in the blast radius. Her assets were frozen. Soon she didn't even have the cash flow to maintain the appearance of her former life. She was suffocating under a mountain of debt and legal notices. A final email from David's personal lawyer landed like a tombstone. It was the final, non-negotiable divorce settlement. Attached was a notice of a compulsory stock buyback, citing a clause in their original founders' agreement: in the event that one partner acted in a way that caused grave harm to the company, the other had the right to buy back the majority of their shares at a symbolic, nominal price. The email also included screenshots of the financial data proving her complicity in Marcus's economic crimes. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a verdict. Catherine stared at the screen, her fingers numb and cold. The numbers and charts swam before her eyes, twisting and morphing until they resolved into a single image: David's face, his eyes cold, piercing, and utterly devoid of emotion. She finally understood what he'd meant. The game is just beginning was a checkmate he had planned for her from the very start. He wasn't just taking everything from her. He was personally escorting her to the gates of hell. She snatched her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed his number one last time. It went straight to a busy signal. He had blocked her. The lights in conference room 1 burned through the night. The development of Project Phoenix was proceeding at a blistering pace. Guided by the memories of his past life, David's direction was flawless. Alan and the others worked tirelessly, fueled by coffee and conviction. The core of a new technology was being forged in secret, a molten power gathering strength deep beneath the earth, ready to erupt. Sometimes David would appear in the conference room, listening silently to progress reports, his eyes calm and focused. The storm outside finally broke again. A court summons and an official notice from the U.S. Attorney's Office arrived at Catherine's door on the same day. The charges were embezzlement, commercial bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Her empire had finally, officially, crumbled under the cold iron weight of the law. The day Catherine was arrested, the sky was a bruised, ugly gray. She didn't resist. As she was being led to the unmarked federal car, she instinctively looked up at the TechCore tower, at the corner office that had once been hers. Through the distant tinted glass, she thought she could see the silhouette of a man standing tall and still, watching it all unfold. There was no triumph in his posture, no mockery, just a profound stillness of a world settling into a new order. That distant, indifferent gaze was colder and more terrifying than any curse could ever be. She had lost everything, and he couldn't even be bothered to feel anything about it. The wail of the siren faded as the car pulled into traffic, taking with it the last remnants of a corrupt and decadent era. David stood at the window, watching until the car disappeared. He picked up his desk phone, and his voice, calm and steady, cut through the oppressive anxiety that had blanketed the company for weeks. Notify all department heads. The executive conference room in 30 minutes. We're holding a company-wide strategic reboot meeting. David Harrison's era, the true era of TechCore, was, at this moment, officially beginning. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, fierce and blinding.